We regroup up in the Slack chat where the coaches debrief. We be piecing these puzzles, occupy the chunk of the pie. Ain't no lie when we hit the block, helmet's casket is tied. You be seeing helmet after helmet, helmet after helmet. First place, second place, fifth place, eighth place, 12th place, 15, 16, 20. So many helmets, you got blurred vision, we got too many. Tick your check. Oh man, shit. They got us fucked up. Army, regroup. We pledge always to have that edge. We don't fire warning shots. Competition just dropped. We locked and loaded before lock. Whatever the time, yeah. Do you even correlate?
Being the best requires a willingness to outwork your competition. There's always someone smarter, faster, sharper, more naturally gifted to come around.
What is up? Welcome in, DFS Army, followers, subscribers, VIPs. This is FantasyFling for another week in review, tournament strategy, Millie Maker review, and a little bit of afternoon slate. So let's go ahead and look at it. We're going to start with the Millie Maker, what won, the winning lineup, as always. That's how we like to kick it off. It's a Millie Maker centric show. So this week, you know, if you played the slate, you probably lost money. If you played the good plays, it was kind of one of those weeks, specifically in tournaments. I mean, I don't really know what to say much about it, except for the fact that the winning Millie Maker stack, the winning stack had 3 players from a team that scored 16 points. Okay. It was led by a quarterback that had more interceptions than touchdowns. So wild slate, low scoring week, kind of a turd fest everywhere. Where my turds at? They were everywhere. And the top lineup was a Desmond Ridder stack with Drake London, with Kyle Pitts, and there was another stack with Kyron Williams and Cooper Kupp, which was really what brought this lineup home between the 52 points between the two. Total stacking points, 116, and you had a 23-point average. So obviously on the lower side, the stack was contrarian, and that's what we will get into in the next part. We had Desmond Ridder, 4%, Kyron Williams, Desmond Ridder, and Drake London, 10%, and then Kyle Pitts, 9%. So this stack right here was contrarian, and they ate a lot of chalk most of the rest of the lineup. So Kyron Williams, 18%. Mostert, oh my gosh, that's really high, 54%. So he smashed though. He was an all in play. I actually raised my exposures. Normally I had set a max exposure to 35%. It's kind of what a lot of us do at DFS Army via backtesting. But with Raheem Mostert, it was just too good of a spot. When I have like core plays like that, I will elevate it. And I right about 55%. But even then didn't get positive leverage. Was just even with the field. And Amon-Ra, really low owned, 4%. Wow. Kyle Pitts, like I said, in that stack, and then Shaheed, 1%. So that was a leverage play. There were several leverage plays. Ridder, what was crazy about this play is he was 4th in scoring, but only 5,000. He only scored 22 points, which meant when you play like a Desmond Ridder, you're kind of hoping that the top plays fail and you didn't pay up, so it didn't really hurt you. He got 4X. Like, that's kind of perfect. That's what you want. He gets 4X, but there's no ceiling type performances from a Stafford, from a Burrow, from a Jalen Hurts. And that's exactly what happened. So he ended up being one of the top leverage plays at 4%. Amon-Ra, this was crazy to me. I remember as soon as I saw Amon-Ra score a touchdown, I was like, how did I not make sure that I had exposure to Amon-Ra coming back? It was recency bias. It was a tough matchup. We hadn't seen him in a week or two. And sure enough, he comes back in, and it's business as usual for Amon-Ra. So great leverage play. And I think the lesson there is guys like Amon-Ra who get, a ton of targets on any given week, you always want to get exposure to those guys, specifically when they're at low ownership. Amon-Ra, 14 targets. So 12 receptions, 124 yards, and a touchdown. Just absolute leverage play to the T. Vikings D, 3%. In some ways, we think Fields maybe, could have got right in the second half and turned things around. But the Vikings were all over Chicago early on, so I'm not really sure how much different this would have been. But I think it was a great play, and really more of the field should have been on Vikings D. And then Rashid Shaheed at 1%, 3,700, and he was going against Houston, which we know isn't a good team. Stroud's been playing good. The offense has been going, but defensively, we know they're not good. So, you take a gamble on a guy like that, and who has that deep threat and smash. So, really for me, and this is kind of, what we're going to jump into in the next part of this is MME strategy of DFS pros. I have been doing this, for a little over a year at DFS Army, just kind of studying winning Millie Maker builds, and then go into DFS pros and seeing what they're doing each and every week to win or to try to take down a large field GPP like the Millie Maker. And so many times they will pay down for a quarterback. So they'll get these quarterbacks like Desmond Ridder, who are 5,000, stack them with a good receiver who's also cheap, like a Drake London, pay down tight end. And if this stack goes off, their mindset is if this stack goes off and a lot of the other quarterbacks fail, the chalk quarterbacks, I'm in a great spot because I have Kyron Williams, who's in a great spot. I have Raheem Mostert, who's in a great spot. I can afford these guys. I can also afford Cooper Kupp, who we know who Cooper Kupp is, and same with Amon-Ra St. Brown. So, these are 4 guys that bring that kind of floor and ceiling that you need to take down a large field GPP. And this is doable by hitting that stack, that right stack, with the good core plays. And that's exactly what you get. You had from Ridder, London, Pitts, you had only $13,000 salary. So they hit 4.5x, which is tournament winning upside, of course, because this total lineup was 4.56x. And then obviously you get the ceiling that you need from guys like Mostert. Kupp can certainly score more than 30. He didn't get there. Amon-Ra hit over 4x. So, that's what you're looking for. So that's what you're looking for. Lower scoring week, but the winning score is still at 248 points. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into the winning builds. I want to look a little bit at this guy's MME strategy, and it wasn't mass multi-entry, to a T because it was 103 lineups. But nonetheless, it's over 100 lineups. So what I like about this is we can actually get a good idea of, what his overall thought process was, because obviously, we see the winning lineup, but we kind of want to see, some of the other lineups. What were the exposures? So it's a good chance here to take a look. So obviously we just went through the winning lineup. The second one, we had a Rizzer, Jonnu Smith, and Drake London. So seemed to be pretty heavy on Raider lineups. Also Tua, Mostert, Tyreek Hill, and Miami. So Tua +2 with the defense. No bringbacks, no Adam Thielen, no Chuba Hubbard. Ridder, Bijan, London, Pitts. No bringbacks. Not forcing bringbacks here. So it's looking like a lot of Ridder. Just take a peek at exposures. And yeah, so his lineup really at quarterback, there was 3 big ones. Matthew Stafford, 30%, Desmond Ridder, 17%, Tua, 17%. So, more or less nailed the plays. Like Stafford was a great play. Didn't quite get there because Kyron Williams got, a couple touchdowns, but nonetheless, that offense was humming. And then Ridder and Tua were really the great plays here. Obviously, Ridder ended up in the winning lineup. Tua had a pretty decent day himself. And other than that, pretty low at quarterback. And then kind of like I said, just being able to go over for like core plays. So you will see most of the guys, and this is what I really like about his strategy. Most of the guys are going to be under 30%, right? So kind of like how we talk about how I play it is, yeah, most of the exposures are not going to be high, but if you identify a couple areas where you want to get positive leverage, Talk about really going in here with 75% Mostert. And obviously Jacobs was popping in, Kyron Williams. These were all good plays. Alvin Kamara. And then at wide receiver, obviously, if you have as much Desmond Ridder as he had, 30% Ridder, you're going to get a good amount of Drake London, assuming you're setting stacking rules, as you obviously always will for a contest like this. Really any contest, but specifically the Millie Maker. And then from there, nothing really crazy. High on Cup, over the field. Great play. Over the field on Downs. We identified Downs as a good play too. Even with the field on Christian Kirk, same thing. He was chalk. So, getting the good value plays that you want to have. A little under on Chase, but, still over 20%. So, a lot of the teens here, but, not going crazy in on anyone. And pretty high on Higbee. But 17% Stafford. So I'm guessing, with Cooper Kupp and Puka Nakua being as high price as they were, probably got quite a few Higbee in those stacks if you're setting a roll. And then high on Philly and Miami. Philly going against Zach Wilson. Didn't work out this week. Miami, I loved Miami too, going against Bryce Young in a negative game script. Like that's kind of what you want to target, right? Pretty large. I think it was like a 10.5 point spread. So really good stuff. I asked Geek and hopefully he will see my DM. He's not going to leave me on red and he will reply. But I asked him, what is going on? Because let me show you something. I used to see Statsational. I've done this review several times and we've looked at Statsational. Same thing. Awesemo. One of the top, everyone knows who Awesemo is. These guys are not playing the Millie Maker this year. And I just want to know what the thought process is on that. Specifically, what changed. And it's not all the DFS pros, just a few guys. And it's certainly some of the best. So let's take a look at Whistles. Now, one thing I like about Whistles, and we'll look at his top lineup, then we'll get into his exposures, is he will lock a guy in, but he also will have it. It's all over the place. He's going to lock a quarterback in that he really likes. And then he's on the other end of the spectrum where he's just going to play everyone. So when he feels that he really identifies a quarterback, he's not afraid to go all in. So his top lineup, Tua, Mostert, Hill, no bringbacks, 184 points. So, nothing to write home about for sure. Finished 800th. And he lost money, but he had 150 uniques. So good for him. And kind of what I was saying, he'll go all in, but here 12% to 16% Stafford, and then hit 18 quarterbacks. I think I counted. So, just look at all these guys, 18 quarterbacks. Now notice, this is kind of what I was talking about a little bit earlier with the guy who won the Millie Maker. He's got some turds here. Okay. Jimmy G, Zach Wilson, Minshew, Mayfield, Mac Jones. So just playing a lot of these guys and going all in on some of the running backs that he really likes. So David Montgomery got burned here. Got 30% Chuba Hubbard, 23% Kyron Williams. Kamara, so a lot of running backs. I think he had 6 running backs above 28%. Quite a few running back in the flex builds. And then not really all that excited about any of these guys. And, that kind of makes sense. If you have that many quarterbacks, you're not really going to be way over the field on any wide receivers. So, typically when you see a lot of exposure to a wide receiver, it's also, you got a lot of exposure to a quarterback in stacks. You'll have your cores here and there, which, getting a lot of Jamar Chase, but not enough. Well, the least amount of Chase was actually good on the slate. So Schultz, Ertz, yeah, and not too crazy on any tight ends. So, losing day for him, not a whole lot to see there, but I like to look at a few things. Now, before I forget, I'm just going to search for it. Our boy Jay Barr, he told me I can critique his lineup. What am I going to critique? Top 60. In fact, this isn't right. He actually placed 59th in the Millie Maker. You can go look it up if you play the Millie. DFS Army Avi. I think he's an Atlanta Falcons fan. I could see it. He had a Georgia Bulldogs DFS Army avatar. So I like the helmet. I like that. And then, I see Atlanta Falcons stack. So, I mean, awesome. Way to root on your team and be a fan, and also like cheer them on the sweat of winning the Millie Maker. And really, this lineup was beautiful. So shout out to J Bar. He did a great job. He kind of had the perfect stack, really. And what I like about it is he didn't force the tight end. So he didn't force like the double stack, because we see it a lot and normally does not win. So he had Desmond Ridder to Drake London. However, he did force the Logan Thomas bring back, and that's where he said he made the mistake. But I don't really think it was a mistake. I think it was just tight end variance. So Logan Thomas was in a good spot. If you're kind of playing this game environment to go off, a little bit like it did, at least on the Washington side. And Logan Thomas, you would have thought he would have certainly got there. He was cheap and in a good spot. So in a scenario like that, that's when I do like forcing a bring back. And, Raheem Mostert, DeAndre Swift. So these were core guys we identified. Amon-Ra St. Brown, that's the leverage play. Like I was saying, a stud, out of sight, out of mind. He's low owned, but we know what he can do. Thielen is a guy, we were on this week, had him as a cash game play, had him as a tournament play. He's been getting 11, 12 targets a game, just stupid for his salary. And, Kyron Williams, another really strong play. Really just defense, and Logan Thomas was what made the difference here. So, 200 points on a low scoring week, incredible lineup. Surprisingly, it was duped, but nonetheless, I mean, he would have definitely been happy to split a milli, 500 each way. So, shout out to him, DFS Army subscriber. By the way, if you're not a DFS Army subscriber, you can certainly join us. At the very least, hit that like button, comment, let you know you like this kind of content. Let us know you like this kind of content. Subscribe and hit the notification button so you never miss an episode. If you want to join the Army so you get these plays, you get the optimizer that built this lineups like this, the coach's notes, the chalkboard, the matchups, all the different things. And we got new updates coming out each and every week. It seems, with the Domination Station. So use code FantasyFling for 10% off a VIP subscription. So shout out to our boy J Bar. Great lineup. And then one guy I want to look at real quick, and then we're going to go over to the afternoon slate before we wrap this up. C Sears, this is the first time I've covered his lineup this year, but this guy is really good in the Millie Maker. I've seen his name repeatedly towards the top of the Millie Maker. He's a 150 player. He's got uniques. He placed 86th. And there's just something about the way this guy plays that it just seems like he's onto something that other people aren't. And I'm going to explain that to you here in a second when we look at his exposures. So, I've covered him on this show before, but I certainly want to dive into it a little bit more going forward and, see what he's doing. So he had a Desmond Ridder stack, obviously, Drake London, Kyle Pitts, Terry McLaurin, bring back ETN, Mostert, Amon-Ra. So just smashing plays, right? Miami D hurt him. McLaurin hurt him just because, really, to win the Millie Maker, you need pretty much flames everywhere. ETN, wow. ETN, I would have thought he would have had flames, but he didn't quite get there. So, 198 points, though. a good lineup. And, it wasn't so much that, he had the best lineup, but he was very much in on a lot of the players that you saw in the winning Millie Maker build. So we're going to get to that in a second. So more Ritter, ETN, Mostert. This one had AJ Brown. So a lot of variations off of the same lineup, kind of keeping that player pool tight. And okay, so I got AJ Brown. I got, Amon-Ra St. Brown. So just kind of cycling through these one-offs to try to hit the nuts. And I like that because Geek was talking about this on the Players Club. You're going to build several variations off this same lineup. I like that. So kind of the same thing here. We got Ritter, Kamara, Mostert, back to Amon-Ra, London, Pitts, and McLaurin, like you saw before, Kyron Williams. So this time it was just Kamara. That was the difference. So, keep that in mind. When we go to user exposures, 96% Desmond Ritter. So this is kind of what I'm talking about, and kind of with like whistles go woo too. He'll lock in a quarterback sometimes, and he was pretty close here, and he ended up being in the nuts, top 4 quarterback. So I just thought that was very interesting. Now, what hurt him was a lot of Christian McCaffrey, and obviously he got hurt, right? And he's 9,500, so kind of hard, and you're going against a good defense. A lot of positive leverage, but didn't work out here. And then, when you start to think of lineup construction, though, if he has 96% Desmond Ritter, that certainly makes sense how he's able to, and specifically when he's stacking him with Drake London, how he's able to fit Christian McCaffrey, right? And then all in the teens. And Raheem Mostert, under on Mostert, which is, it's pretty crazy to have 30% of a player and be 25% under the field. Terry McLaurin, a lot of McLaurin. I think what would have helped him certainly get closers if he had cycled through some of the wide receivers on the Washington side, like Curtis Samuel. A little bit more Curtis Samuel in here. That would have certainly helped, but did really well on the Drake London, Cooper Kupp. Loved London this week. Yeah, and then just so really heavy on those 3 guys, and then just kind of 10%, 15% and less, really. And obviously a lot of Kyle Pitts too. 32% San Fran D. So you got to imagine a good amount of Christian McCaffrey stacked there. So, very sharp player. Like I said, this isn't just a one time that he had a good day. This guy, I've seen his name consistently near the top of the leaderboards for the Millie Maker. So good for him. What I want to do, kind of wrap this up, I want to look at a little bit of the afternoon slate. I really like these afternoon contests because it's 4 games. So it's kind of like playing a showdown. There's so less that you have to get right. Because kind of we go through these top lineups and we're like, this guy had 7 out of 9 right. But in the 2 players that he didn't have right, they weren't bad. They just didn't get there. On a 4-game slate, it's so much easier to get it correct because the player pool is so more condensed. So I like to look at these, and I really think these contests are just kind of goes back to kind of that showdown mentality. The smaller the slate, I think the more you can guess right, you can get right, and I think more winnable they are. So this is something I've been playing more. I started playing a lot of XFL and USFL in the off season just because I missed DFS football so much, and I really came to love these smaller slates more. So one thing to keep in mind for these smaller slates, you have to kind of allow for players versus the defense. You have to allow for 2 running backs in the same game because you will see it. They will end up in the winning lineup. So it's a little bit different. You obviously, some of you're going to have a lot of chalky lineups. So you will have more duplicates. I think it's kind of like playing a cash game, line up in like a single entry or 3 max. Like you're really just looking for kind of like one pivot. If you can find one spot where you get a player that's less than 5% owned, you're doing good. So, I wouldn't go too crazy off the wall with it, but I think, it's generally going to be a lot chalkier than your main lineup. What did we see in the Millie Maker? 127%. Well, this lineup's 227%. So, but what won it? 100,000. This was a $15, 39,200 entry. So $15 large field GPP. We got Jared Goff. We got Amon-Ra. We got Josh Reynolds. And no bringbacks. So in that lineup, you also had Kyron Williams, Ramondre Stevenson, Zach Ertz, Cooper Kupp, and Detroit D. And I'm also like a big fan of double tight end in these kind of lineups. Like I don't leave any restrictions because it's really hard to get different, right? So on a 4-game slate, you're really trying to differentiate yourself quite a bit more. So this was a Hurts lineup with A.J. Brown. And, I mean, if Hurts doesn't throw 2-3 interceptions, maybe this lineup gets there. It's pretty close. So Williams, Myers, Kendrick Bourne. So you got Hurts, no bringbacks. So not forcing bringbacks. This one had +2, had a bringback, but again, as you saw, they weren't forced. They just naturally happen. Goff, Laporta, Amon-Ra, and Detroit D. No bringbacks. So you've seen QB +1, QB +2 with the defense included. And we'll kind of look at exposures. Jalen Hurts. And that's another thing. You have to be willing to potentially get more leverage. It's kind of like on a showdown. If you're set max exposures, sure, you might hit that one lineup that's kind of perfect. But sometimes the best way to do is just, try to get over the field in spots where you think a player is underowned and vice versa. But you want to be under the field sometimes when a player you think is overowned. So Hurts was the main guy. It's interesting. So 54%, and it just kind of goes to show, right? Making 150, 54% Hurts, and the winning lineup was 15%. But 15% of 150, it's over 15 lineups, like 20 lineups. So it's still pretty good. Running back, not too crazy on anyone. Really played the best plays, didn't play any backups. Although we can disagree on if Rachaad White was the best play. Way over on Parker and Kendrick Bourne. Little Cooper. Well, so that was the fade. Cooper Kupp. Sometimes you can fade one of the best plays on the slate and still win. Just wild. As we see here. So faded Cooper Kupp, but had enough of Cooper Kupp to have the winning build. We've definitely seen that before. Sometimes you just get lucky on plays like that. So good for HIXX. So I think we'll wrap it up. Appreciate y'all joining me. If you like this kind of content, please hit that like button. Let me know. And, let me know who you played, how the slate worked out for you. If you won money, if you played QB +1, QB +2, who'd you go all in on? Who were you under the field on? So we appreciate you joining us. We will be back. We got so much content coming your way. Tuesday starts with the first look, showdown content, Millie Maker, tournament tactics, players club, VIP only. You got to be a VIP for that. So use code FantasyFling for 10% off. And then, on and on. live before lock. We got all the shows. So it's going to do it. Best of luck this next week. We will see you all next Monday for another weekend review.